This is Jeff Makinen at DRF Sports taking a look at Super Bowl 54, which will take place Sunday evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, featuring the 15-3 San Francisco 49ers, the NFC champions, and the AFC champions, the 14-4 Kansas City Chiefs, in what should be a fairly even battle. Your DRF Sports subscription provides you with all the latest matchups and betting lines, betting angles and line movements, along with the most accurate game simulator and power rating system anywhere. And with football season coming to an end, our focus will shift to basketball, where we have featured the NBA, NHL, and of course college basketball leading up right through March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So sign up today at sports.drf.com, get your subscription started, and let's start winning. This Super Bowl opened up as a pick with an over-under of 51. However, the line has shifted to Kansas City -1 and the over-under at 54.5, which has moved up 3.5 points. So there are some outlets that do have Kansas City -1.5. So either way, Kansas City just a small favorite in this game. Taking a look at the rating systems for this game, estimate number 1 of our game simulator calls for a Kansas City 31-29 victory. However, estimate number 2 calls for San Francisco to win 25-23. And the power line is Kansas City as a 2-point hypothetical favorite. Taking a consensus of the 3, Kansas City will be roughly a 1-point favorite, which lo and behold just so happens to be where the line sits right now. The over-under, averaging these two together, would be 54. And yep, you guessed it, folks, 54.5. Those odds makers are sure good. So really not a lot of line value in terms of our rating systems. The line is pretty much set where it should be. Taking a look at the stat profiles of these two teams, and again, you'll see they are rather evenly matched. San Francisco plus 11.3 points per game point differential. Kansas City plus 9.6. Turnover differential plus 7 to plus 8. No real advantage there. Some areas where they do differ. Kansas City, of course, more of a passing team with 283 yards per game and with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. The 49ers, an outstanding running team, 154 yards per game, 4.7 yards per rush. In fact, in their previous game, the NFC Championship against the Packers, they rushed for an incredible 285 yards per game following their 186 rushing yard performance against the Vikings. So their running game has been clicking on all cylinders with Raheem Mostert leading the show. Defensively, San Francisco does have the edge. They're the second-ranked team defense in terms of total yards per game allowed, 279 yards per game as opposed to 352 for Kansas City, which ranks just 17th, so middle of the pack. However, on the scoring side, San Francisco's edge is only 1 point a game. They allow 19 points a game versus 20 for Kansas City. So these teams are relatively evenly matched. Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes more of the passing team. San Francisco has the running game edge and defensive edge in this ball game. Taking a look at some of our betting angles, San Francisco 7-1 this year versus good offenses, which we qualify as teams allowing more or scoring more than 24 points per game. They average a 12-point victory against teams in that profile. However, Kansas City matches that 7-0 against they're on a 7-0 spread run against good offensive teams, averaging 350 yards per game offensively or more in the second half of the year this year. So they've covered 7 straight against those good offenses with an average win of 33-20. Kansas City is also 7-1 after they won their previous game by 10 or more points this season. Interesting to note here that Kansas City does qualify with their 352 yards per game allowed as a poor defensive team, and Kyle Shanahan is 10-3 over against those types of teams in the second half of the year. So after game 9 and following, Shanahan's 49er teams have played over against these teams. In this case, the average score, however, is only 26-26 roughly, so that is 52 points, which does not even reach the 54.5 where the total currently sits. There is one I would consider fairly strong trend here that favors the under. Andy Reid has gone under 9 straight road games with 2 or more weeks of rest. I know this isn't technically a road game, however, it is away from Arrowhead. And with 2 weeks to prepare for the game, he's 9-0 under with an average score there of just 20-14. So if you're looking for something to hang your hat on here for the under, that trend might actually be a winner there with 9 consecutive unders in that spot. Analyzing our betting action in this one, 62% of the bettors do like Kansas City, and that has helped push the money towards the Chiefs line movement from pick to -1. 81% the over. Of course, that has had the total rising significantly from 51 to 54.5. So Kansas City in the over seems to be the public play here as we look at Super Bowl 54. Taking a look at these team schedules, and you can see that Kansas City is on quite the roll. They've won and covered 8 consecutive games. They had been playing extremely well defensively leading into the end of the regular season, allowing just 9-3-3 in 3 of those games. However, they have reverted back to their early season form defensively somewhat here in the playoffs, allowing 31 to Houston and 24 to Tennessee. Their offense has picked up the slack to cover that defense, with 51 points scored against Houston and 35 against Tennessee. So their offense is clicking again with Patrick Mahomes recovering from his midseason injury. San Francisco comes in here, winners of 4 straight, 3 straight covers, a couple of dominating performances statistically. One thing that is interesting here, the 49ers have outgained their opponents on the ground in the 2 playoff games, 186-21 and 285-62 rushing yards. That is quite the dominance of the line of scrimmage. In fact, they've been so good running the football and stopping their run that they've only had to attempt 27 passes combined in those 2 games, really limiting the exposure of inexperienced Jimmy Garoppolo to this playoff pressure. Head-to-head, not a lot of prior matchups in this series. Kansas City did win their most recent matchup at Arrowhead in the 2018 season, winning and covering as a 6-point favorite with a 38-27 victory. It should be noted in that game that Jimmy Garoppolo had already been lost for the season at that point with an injury for the 49ers. There are several other trends and angles that I've researched here with the Super Bowl. Dating back for the last 8 times the line has moved 1 or more points in one of the sides' favor. In this case, the line has moved 1 point to Kansas City. Had you have bet with that line movement, you would have been 6-2 against the spread. So that does favor the Chiefs here. Line moving from pick to -1. The AFC has won and covered 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls. Again, favoring Kansas City here. This one, pretty important as we look at this game. They say that the old saying is that defense wins championships, and that certainly has been the case here in the Super Bowl. Teams who ranked higher in the regular season in terms of total yards defense per game, they've won 67% of the past 36 Super Bowls. So 24-12 in the last 36 Super Bowls. In fact, when they're underdogs in this game, they're 7-2 against the spread with 6 outright wins. San Fran did rank number 2 in the league in total defense, where Kansas City ranked just 17th. In situations where one team ranked 3 positions higher in the regular season in terms of total defense, they were 17-10-2 against the spread and 20-9 straight up. Finally, an interesting fact from this week's Sports Forum. In all the Super Bowls so far, all 53 prior Super Bowls, teams who rush for more yards are 39-13 in that game, 36-13-3 against the spread. So the running game is going to be the key here. I would narrow it down even further. San Francisco absolutely is going to depend on Raheem Mostert and the running game to limit, again, the exposure of Jimmy Garoppolo. If they're forced to have Garoppolo get into a shootout with Mahomes, they really have no chance in this game. They're going to have to run the football. So how does Kansas City respond to that San Francisco running attack. If they can hold it down or limit it, they have a good chance to win this game. In this week's sports forum, 3 of our 4 handicappers like the Chiefs to win this game minus 1 point. 2 of those handicappers qualify it as a best bet. If you're looking for a contrarian play, perhaps you might want to consider the under here. All the public action is taking the over. There is that nice Andy Reid trend that does favor the under in terms of preparing with 2+ weeks heading into a road game. So anyway you pick it, best of luck this weekend. This is the end of the NFL season. I hope you had a great season here at DRF Sports. This is Jeff Makinen at DRF Sports, Twitter handle @SportsDBExpert. Best of luck in Super Bowl Sunday.